line item doon sa budget ng Office of the President na confidential fund? Meron po bang line item po? Yes or no?
There is no, Madam Chair.
Yes.
But Mr. Chair.
Okay. How about noong 2023 budget of the Office of the Vice President? Is there a line on about confidential funds?
There is, Mr. Chair, there is a line item for
Magkano po, Mr. Chair, yung confidential funds of the Office of the Vice President for 2023?
500 million, Mr. Chair.
Okay, you're correct. Kasi nandito naman, meron naman tayong ano dyan. Okay, so kung i-compare natin, Mr. Chair, yung Office of the Vice President budget GAA 2022 and GAA 2023, so makikita natin agad-agad yung difference, no, na yung confidential funds sa Office of the Vice President ng 2022 ay wala, pero sa Office of the Vice President sa 2023 ay meron. Okay, so paano po nagkaroon ng 125 million na confidential funds ang Office of the Vice President noong 2022, Mr. Chair, sa DBM?
Okay, Mr. Chair, while the OVP has no provision for the confidential funds under the fiscal year 2022 GAA, the said release of funds was charged against the contingent fund using the existing PAP of the Office of the Vice President, that is the Good Governance Program, Mr. Chair.
Well, ano po yung ibig sabihin ng good governance program po? Kasi defined, alam po natin, ano, meron tayong JC o joint circular governing confidential funds. So can you elaborate on good governance, Mr. Chair, yung binabanggit ninyo po?
The Good Governance is a program of the OVP, and so that's the basis for us for the release of the confidential plan of the Office of the Vice President, Mr. Chair.
Well, can you elaborate ano ba yung good governance? Dahil malinaw po, no, doon sa rules or the joint circular governing confidential funds, yung mga pwede lang napondohan ng confidential funds, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, we have already responded to that inquiry. We have already sent already the letter dated September 11, 2023, as to what is the all about the good governance program of the OVP, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, these representations has no copy of what you are referring to as the good governance programs. May I request for the copy, Mr. Chair?
Time is up.
Please take note of the manifestation of Congressman Castro Comsec.
Walang na-receive ng secretary.
Would you like to respond, Comsec?
Your Honor, as to the part of the committee secretariat, we have not received a document from the Department of Budget Management. We have sent an invitation on September 13. We are not in receipt of a position paper or any document dated September 11, Your Honor. It might be a different committee.
Okay, but just the same, yes, I may respond to the inquiry as far as what is all about the good governance program, particularly the good governance engagement and social services projects. This is in consideration of the urgency of the safe implementation of various projects and activities of the Office of the Vice President across its satellite offices for the last Okay. The conduct of its official engagement and functional representation in international and local events, the implementation of various projects and activities relevant to national security and peace and order, and implementation of the same with proper security and safety protocols for the benefit of the institution. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ma'am, you only have 1 minute.
1 minute.
Please wrap up your...
Okay. So did the Office of the Vice President in 2022 asked for a budget for confidential funds for the DBM?
Your Honor, Mr. Chair, for 2022, there is no request for the confidential in the budget, but we have, as mentioned, they have requests for the chargeable. We have requests for 2022, but that was charged to the contingent fund.
There was a, so may request po ba o wala?
Doon sa proposed budget for 2022, wala po.
Pero saan po kinuha yung 125? Sinasabi nyo kanina, Mr. Chair, ay doon sa contingent fund. So, hindi po ba kapag merong request for a lump sum o merong ibibigay ang yung or pagkukuhanan yung lump sum, dapat may request?
Okay.
So,
Yes, Mr. Chair. So during the implementation of the fiscal year 2022 budget, there was a request coming from the Office of the Vice President to release an additional requirement for the fiscal year 2022 budget. Basically, hindi lang po yung confidential plan, but also for some PS and MOE requirements. Now, this was...
pinag-usapan lang natin yung confidential
Okay.
funds.
So, Mr.
Mr.
Chair, yes, there was a request coming from the Office of the Vice President during the implementation of the budget in that year. So that's why in...
So, Mr. Chair, may I cut you on that with due respect. So, may I ask, Mr. Chair, the request...
Last
Yes.
question, please.
So, second down na lang ako, Mr. Chair. May I ask the DBM, Mr. Chair, the letter request from the Office of the Vice President? So, yun na lang, Mr. Chair, at itutuloy ko na lang po mamaya.
The DBM is requested to submit the letter of the Honorable Vice President. The
yes,
request
Mr.
letter of
Chair.
the Honorable. Please submit it to the COMSEC.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next to interpolate is sino ba? Honorable Nika Swansing. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I was just hoping to take this opportunity because COA, the right team from COA is already here. So if I may request the COMSEC, Mr. Chair, and the permission of the Honorable Chairman to pull up some slides on the screen, Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
please.
Mr. Chair, these were the same slides that I presented to the Committee on Appropriations during the deliberation on the budget of the Office of the Vice President 2 weeks ago. For those who were not there in the meeting, a very quick summary, Mr. Chair, in the interest of time. So these, the slides were put together based on the different documents submitted by COA in compliance to the subpoena duces tecum and accomplishment report submitted by the Office of the Vice President. And here, Mr. Chair, several things to note. Essentially, we have summarized across the 4 quarters in terms of the disbursement of the confidential expenses of the Office of the Vice President, the different audit findings of the Commission on Audit across the 4 different quarters. So for Q4 2022, which is the subject of the notice of disallowance, it was found that there's a 73 million out of 125 million that was considered by COA as disallowed in audit. And then for the succeeding quarters, accordingly, Mr. Chair, you would see here the proportion of the 125 million, which was questioned in the audit order memorandum and not questioned across the succeeding quarters. During the deliberations of the Office of the Vice President, President's budget, I directed a question towards COA to please enlighten us as to the grounds for the notice of disallowance for Q4 2022 and the 3 succeeding quarters which were subjected to the AOM, Mr. Chair. However, during the OVP budget hearing, the representative of COA, Assistant Commissioner Alexander Juliano, said that he was not privy to the information as he was not part of the team handling the confidential expenses. So, Mr. Chair, I believe the team who did the audit is present in today's hearing. So if we may request, Mr. Chair, COA to please enlighten us for the 4 different quarters covered by the notice of the disallowance and the audit order memorandum, may we please request, Mr. Chair, COA to please enlighten us as to the ground. So perhaps, Mr. Chair, we can go quarter by quarter. We can first start with Q4 2022, which was the subject of the notice of disallowance.
Any representative from COA?
Mr. Chair, Attorney Gloria Camora, the State Auditor of
Attorney
FAO,
Camora.
yes, will answer the question
Attorney
of the
Camora, you're
Honorable
recognized.
Congresswoman.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair. As to the 2022 notice of disallowance, there were
Ma'am,
3
pakilakasan po ninyo yung boses nyo, hindi marinig.
Okay. There were 3 items that are part of the notice of disallowance. The first one is on the non-submission of documents on the payment of rewards. The second one is charging some items that are not compliant under the rules joint circular. And the third one is non-submission of the revised accomplishment report of the office of the VP to the 3 regulatory offices, which are the Office of the President, the Senate President, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, because what they have submitted was the original one, and they made an amendment, but as of now, they have not resubmitted the amended accomplishment report.
Mr. Chair, if
Please proceed,
COA may
Congresswoman
please
Francis.
enlighten to explain to us, because it seems a little bit technical po as to how it was explained by COA. Kung pwede po maipaliwanag po sa atin in non-technical terms as to the grounds for the disallowance po.
COA, pakisimplify po. Please explain it in layman's term.
Yes po. Basically, the disallowances is because hindi po sila nag-submit ng required na documents under the joint circular.
Mr. Chair, if we may move to the next slide.
Please proceed.
ComSec, next slide please. Here, Mr. Chair, shows a breakdown of the different expense items listed in the accomplishment report for Q4 2022 and the 3 succeeding quarters, which were the subject of the AOMs. Mr. Chair, I would like to again throw the question to COA, because it seems to me, I am not an auditor, so it seems to me that across the 3 succeeding quarters, the categories that were flagged as questioned in the AOM are similar across the 3 succeeding quarters. So, pare-pareho po yung naka-orange po. Payment of reward, yung provision of medical and food aid, at saka po payment of incentives or traveling relative to the confidential operation. So, Mr. Chair, if I may request COA to please enlighten us as to the reason why these categories seem to be repeatedly flagged across the succeeding quarters under audit.
COA.
Yes, Mr. Chair. As to the payment of rewards, the joint circular requires a document, the supporting documents evidencing the success of the information gathering. As far as the documents that they have submitted, we are not so far, we are not satisfied with the documents they have submitted, so we asked them to submit the documents that would satisfy the joint circular. As to the provision of food and medical items, again, we asked them for an explanation, since by themselves food and medical aid appears to not fall under the expenses allowed by the joint circular. So we are asking for explanation on those items. And then it's the same with traveling expenses, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, in the interest of time, I'll move to my final slide.
You still have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Clarificatory question sa Mr. Chair kasi at least nandito na ba yung team sa COA. Last slide, please, COMSEC. Here, Mr. Chair, I would like to ask COA, because very interestingly po, isa po sa mga napansin natin is the length of disbursement for the 125 million across the different quarters po. Meron po ba na information yung COA as to how how the disbursements were done in terms of the speed by which the disbursements were done? Like, for example po, the 125 million in December were spent in 11 days as opposed to in Q3 2023 po, wherein it was spent in 79 days. So, kasi po, one thing that we can see as well in the previous slide is regardless of the length of the disbursement or the speed of the disbursement or the areas of surveillance, if you can move to the previous slide, COMSEC. Ito po, the numbers of areas under surveillance are different, and the speed of the disbursement is different as well. But it seems like the expenditure patterns are very similar po across categories and across the different quarters. So, meron po bang nakita yung COA with regards to that po, Mr. Chair?
Please wrap up your questions. Pakisagot na lang po, tapos na po kayo.
Mr. Chair, since we were given the data on the areas and they have also submitted the evidences of payments, we did not conduct a study on the speed by which the frequency of the payments, as long as we were satisfied with the number of areas that they have served. So if we can average it based on that, the number of areas, I think it is possible to be spending the said amounts.
Mr. Chair, final question na lang
Okay,
po.
last question.
Because the AOMs were issued po in February 1, 2024 for the first AOM, and then the second AOM po on August 8, 2024. Reading through the AOMs po, the Office of the Vice President is given 15 days to respond to the AOMs. I believe the first one has been responded to in April. So meron na po bang response doon po sa August 8 na AOM?
Yes, Madam Chair, they have submitted their reply to the AOMs, and the audit is on the compliance is ongoing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Those are my clarificatory questions po. Clarification, because the team handling the audit is now here. So just wanted to clarify po dun po sa slides na present po nung nakaraang OVP budget hearing. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair. May I approach the table? Request 1 minute suspension.
The chair declares 1 minute suspension. Session resumes.
Mr. Chair, may I
The
request...
Honorable Vice President is recognized.
Thank you. May I request to leave the inquiry?
Ma'am, pwede naman po, considering na hindi naman din po kayo naka-oath and alam naman po namin marami rin po kayong ginagawa. The Vice President is excused.
Thank you.
Thank you po,
Thank you,
ma'am.
everyone. Good morning.
1 minute suspension is declared by the Chair.
Mars, ano ginagawa mo? Nag-claim ng international remittance sa Palawan.
Win-win ang feeling sa Palawan International Remittance. Siguradong cash agad ang tanggap. May free insurance pa. Yan ang International Remittance na para sa Pinoy. Kaya ipalawan mo na.
Wala naman, sir.
Okay. We will recognize the next interpellator, the Honorable Congressman Manuel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning po sa lahat. Well, before I proceed sa questions ko, Mr. Chair, gusto ko munang i-manifest na sobrang disappointed po tayo. Actually, kasabay ng hearing na ito sa Committee on Good Government ay ang plenary debate sa budget for 2025. Mr. Chair, tayo and of course yung mga colleagues natin, we took the time for this committee at inimbitahan ng Office of the Vice President. Pero yun nga po, nalaman natin na hindi po nag-take ng oath at ayun, bago po tayo makapagtanong para din po sana marinig ng nakaupong Vice Presidente, umalis na rin po, Mr. Chair. And actually, when I recalled yung mga ibang pwedeng precedents din natin, Mr. Chair, while nabanggit po na merong right, no? Or may option ang mga public officials na hindi po mag-oath pero hindi naman po all the time na ganun yung ginagawa. Even yung mga former presidents nga po, Mr. Chair, like former President Ramos, former President Estrada, former President Noynoy Aquino ay dumalo nung inibitahan din sila sa mga legislative inquiry at nag-take po sila ng oath, Mr. Chair. And I'm also wondering, Mr. Chair, kung meron din po bang dumalo maliban po sa sitting Vice President, other personnel po from the OVP na nandito, meron po ba, Mr. Chair?
Wala po.
Pero di ba, Mr. Chair, I believe we sent invitations hindi lang sa sitting Vice President pero maging sa iba pang mga nagtitake ng major function sa OVP. So, Mr. Chair, we have afforded several opportunities for the OVP actually, hindi lang sa ating formal budget hearings pero maging sa Committee on Good Government, Mr. Chair. So, I think again, we can let the Filipino people judge, no, kung ano ba talaga ang performance ng mga niluklok nating mga opisyal sa pamahalaan. So ang tatanungin ko na lang, Mr. Chair, ay ang COA. Sa COA ko po
interjection, Mr. Chair.
Yes, the Honorable Franz Castro.
Yes, so since the Vice President did not take the oath, no? And I think wala naman siyang sasabihin kung tatanungin natin. So, buti na lang na umalis na siya. Well, next meeting, Mr. Chair, pwede ba nating imbitahin from the Office of the Vice President dahil sila yung mga pumirma, no, doon sa mga liquidation. Miss Gina Acosta, Special Disbursing Officer from the Office of the Vice President. Miss Julieta Villadel Rey, the Chief Accountant of the Office of the Vice President, to give us light, no, doon sa mga na-disburse, na obliga nila, at saka yung mga receipt na ipinasa nila sa COA. Can we do that, Mr. Chair? This is a motion, Mr. Chair.
Yes po. There is a motion by the Honorable Franz Castro to invite the following resource persons. Number 1, Gina Acosta of the Office of the Vice President and Julieta Villadel Rey, the Chief Accountant of the Office of the Vice President.
Mr. Chair.
Is there...
Mr. Chair, point of clarification lang, so that before we rule on the motion.
Okay, before we rule, what is the point of Honorable Rog?
Mr. Chair, may we know from just so that we know how to decide on the motion if we will agree with it or to object. Mr. Chair, my understanding, I understand there were two names mentioned, but yung isa po, si Ms. Gina Acosta, may we know from the COMSEC if she was already invited?
COMSEC?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. No, she was not invited. We were not informed that she was a special disbursing officer, Your Honor. So she is also not in the website, Your Honor. Of the
So those two names were not invited yet?
Yes, Your Honor, not invited. Ms. Gina F. Acosta, the special disbursing officer, and Ms. Julieta Villadel Rey, the chief accountant of the Office of the Vice President.
Thank you then, Mr. Chair. In that case, I will join the motion of the Honorable Castro. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any second to the motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Is there any objection?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Congressman
Before
Paduano.
the chairman rules with regards to the motion being made by the Honorable Franz Castro, let me ask the chairman. since we invited to the motion of the Honorable Castro, a certain Miss Acosta and Villa del Rey, Julieta. Mr. Chairman, can we ask if, kasi po, if we invite those resource persons or witnesses, no, resource persons or witnesses, they should be, we should have a basis for them to be invited. Now, as far as I know, during the appropriations budget deliberation with regards to the budget of the Office of the Vice President, the name of the two officials from the OBP was mentioned. But I hope, Mr. Chairman, there's a record with regards to what really transpired during the budget deliberation of the appropriations. And with that, Mr. Chairman, let me also ask for the Committee on Appropriations to submit in this committee just purposes of record and to justify the motion being made by the Honorable Franz Castro for them to submit through the Appropriations Committee, through the chair, Chairman Saldico, the excerpts and the documents submitted to the committee with regards to the justification for the presence of the two officials of the OBP in the next hearing, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Noted. We will inform the COMSEC to please take note of the manifestation of the Honorable Paduano. In the meantime, we will rule on the motion of the Honorable Franz Castro. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is carried.
May I proceed, Mr. Chair?
The Honorable Raul Manuel, hindi po minus yung inyong oras. You still have...
Sige,
you still have 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, nabanggit po kanina na hindi qualified sa paggamit ng confidential funds ng Office of the Vice President for 2022 ang medical and food aid. Can we confirm this from the Commission on Audit?
As of yung AOM po namin, since medical...
COA, please wait to be recognized by the chair. Attorney Camora, you are recognized. And please address your answer to the chair.
Mr. Chair, since as of the review of the documents, we have deemed them not qualified as confidential expenses since they just indicated food and medical supplies as is.
Mr. Chair, how much po yung amount na dineclare ng OVP na pinagamitan di umano ng medical and food aid?
Mr. Chair, anong period po?
For 2022, yung confidential funds.
For 2022, it was 35 million for supplies.
For medical and
for
food aid.
medical and supplies, Mr. Chair, 40
million pesos. Sa pagtingin natin, Mr. Chair, bagamat syempre gusto natin na makatulong ang ating mga ahensya ng gobyerno, mapagbuti yung pag-provide ng mga services, pero tingin natin, Mr. Chair, ay questionable nga kung kukunin sa confidential funds ang pag-provide ng medical and food aid. Lalo na't supposedly nga transparent, magkano talaga yung nagagastos para dyan, tapos sa bawat beneficiary din, magkano yung worth ng kanilang nakukuha, ilan din yung beneficiaries. Di ibig sabihin, Mr. Chair, delikado kapag yung ganitong mga tipo ng serbisyo ay ang magiging source natin ay confidential funds. Sa experience po ba, Mr. Chair, ng Commission on Audit, meron din ba dating mga agencies ng pamahalaan na nag-declare nagde-declare na gumamit sila ng confidential funds para sa medical and food aid?
COA, please answer.
Mr. Chair, we have not come across, or kung meron man, Mr. Chair, it has not been under my audit po.
So-
May iba po kasing auditors.
May ibang... Pakilakasan po yung inyong boses.
May ibang auditors po. So, hindi lang po kami. Opo. So, I am not aware if may mga ibang agencies po na nagde-declare ng medical and food supplies.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, ibig sabihin hindi standard practice na ang pantulong sa ating mga kababayan ay kinukuha siya mula sa confidential funds. Tama po ba, Mr. Chair?
COA, please answer.
Tama po, Mr. Chair, pero I would like to point out po sa joint circular that supplies, materials are actually allowed, except that you have to identify them as used in confidential activities like surveillance activities. Yun lang po, Mr. Chair.
So, ibig sabihin, Mr. Chair, under our current rules, meron siyang qualifier pero hindi absolute na ibig sabihin kung based lang sa personal na kagustuhan ng opisyal ay gagamitin niya yung confidential funds para sa medical and food aid. Tama po ba, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Chair. As long as the purchase or rental of supplies, materials, and equipment are for confidential operations, they will comply with the joint circular po.
Okay. Mr. Chair, kasunod naman, na-mention din kanina na walang bagong submission ang Office of the Vice President regarding nga doon sa notice of disallowance. Can the Commission on Audit expound on that, Mr. Chair? Kasi nga, ang dating kasi sa ilan sa mga kababayan natin ay as if ba hindi nabibigyan ng pagkakataon ang OVP para talaga ipaliwanag, tapos after the notice of disallowance na actually ang nais nun, Mr. Chair, ay pinapabalik sa OVP yung hindi maipaliwanag na paggastos ng confidential fund. So para lang po talaga malinaw, Mr. Chair, nabigyan ng pagkakataon ng OVP to explain, and meron po bang mga latest na submissions ang OVP on top of those na naipasa niya na dati?
Mr. Chair, if it pertains to the 2022 confidential fund,
Yes, Mr. Chair.
wala pa pong, actually hindi na po sila required mag-reply sa amin since it's already a notice of disallowance. The remedy na po is either settlement or appeal the notice of disallowance po.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, ibig sabihin, para po maunawaan nating mga kababayan, may pinapabalik na confidential funds na ginamit ng Office of the Vice President noong 2022. Ang options ay ibalik yon or umapela. And kung strong naman po yung appeal at ibig sabihin ay kakayaning ma-justify, edi pwedeng hindi pabalikin. Tama po ba, Mr. Chair?
Tama po, depende po sa decision ng Commission proper, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So kung doon sa second option, Mr. Chair, na umapela, meron bang mga pinasa na mga dokumento ang Office of the Vice President para po formally sila na makapag-appeal para hindi sila require na ibalik yung confidential funds na na-flag? Meron po bang naipasa, Mr. Chair?
Wala po kaming information, Mr. Chair, kung nakapag-file po sila ng appeal nila. It's with the Commission proper na po, so hindi na po sa ICFAO yun fina-file, Mr.
So,
Chair.
Mr. Chair, do we have a representative from the Commission on Audit mismo, labas pa dun sa ICFAO? Meron po ba dito, Mr. Chair? So we can get the response from them, Mr. Chair.
We have here the representative from government audit sector, Mr. Fahad bin Tomawis. could you respond to the query of the Honorable Manuel?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Please be informed that I'm not in the position to answer the question because I'm the audit team leader of the regular audit of the OBP. For the confidential fund, it is part of the ICFAO, and for the appeal, it is part of the commission proper of the Commission on Audit. So it must be addressed to the commission proper of the Commission on Audit.
Mr. Chair, so meron po ba taga-commission?
May I ask the COMSEC if she invited the representative of COA?
Mr. Chair, there's an office that monitors the filing of an appeal, which is the Commission Secretariat Office. So, on the question on whether there's an appeal that has been filed by the OVP, we will validate on that.
Mr. Chair,
Please do so.
Yes.
Yes,
since
Congressman Manuel.
kailangan din nating malaman dito sa komite, how long po yung duration para ma-verify po at ma-check yung ganong impormasyon?
Attorney
Mr. Chair,
Attorney
the
Lapitan.
OVP has 180 days to file an appeal. So we will wait for that within that period, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, kailan po nag-start ang pagbibilang ng 180 days or nearly 6 months?
Sino pong
Mr.
sasagot?
Chair,
Attorney Camora, you're recognized.
Sorry. Mr. Chair, it runs from the receipt of the OVP of the ND, which is per our record, it was on August 9, 2024.
Okay, so ibig sabihin, Mr. Chair, aabangan natin ang magiging action. Nonetheless, Mr. Chair,
Please wrap up your
Yes,
question.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Para lang maliwanag talaga at hindi po nadidisinform ang ating mga kababayan, ibig sabihin po, ang merong dapat na proactive na ginagawa para maghabol at ipaliwanag kung paano ginamit yung confidential funds ay ang OVP po talaga. Hindi po pwedeng linlangin yung ating mga kababayan na it is the burden of other offices, other officials na mag-present po ng mga ebidensya. Kasi in fact, ang sabi na nga po ng COA, kung hindi mag-aapila, dapat po talaga ibalik ang hindi maipaliwanag na paggastos ng confidential funds. Yun lang po, Mr. Chair. Maraming salamat.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, before I recognize the next interpellator, the Honorable Paduano, you're
Thank you, Mr.
recognized.
Chair. Germane to the question asked by Congressman Manuel. To the COA, now, the Office of the Vice President made an appeal. Okay? Now, question. Timeline po tayo. Timeline. So, an appeal will be discussed dun sa director, then commission proper. How long will it take? Yung
COA.
appeal.
Sino
How
po
long
sa
will
inyo?
it take?
COA. Attorney Camora.
Mr. Chair, may I ask
The
a
appeal.
repetition? The appeal is...
How long will it take?
They are given 180 days po from...
Tama, 180 days.
Yes, Mr.
So,
Chair.
within 6 months.
Yes, Mr.
And
Chair.
after that, after the 180 days, which is 6
Ang
months,
tanong po ni Congressman Paduano, after the appeal, gaano po ninyo katagal bago sagutin or maglabas po kayo ng recommendation?
Sandali po. Chairman,
Ay, please.
kasi the appeal, any office, no, for that matter, and in this case, the Office of the Vice President is given 180 days or 6 months from the appeal. Now, so, bibigyan sila ng 6 months. And now, for example, the appeal supposedly started when the NDA, no, Notice of Disallowance started January. So, ang appeal niya, will be pwedeng June 30. Tama? On that year. Tama? Last day, for example, of that 180 days. Tama?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Then again, after the appeal, iakyat sa commission proper.
Mr. Chair, the appeal is filed before the commission proper, Mr. Chair.
So hindi na dadaan doon sa director. Diretso na po sa commission proper.
Hindi na po.
Okay, now, upon the receipt of the commission proper, how long will it take for the commission proper to decide?
Under our rules, Mr. Chair, 60 days po. But,
sorry, 60 days.
yes.
That's 2 months. Okay. But what, please?
But the commission proper may release its decision beyond the 60 days, considering the peculiarity of the case, and of course the appreciation of the submitted documents, Your Honor.
So you're telling the peculiarity of the case in the case of the office of the Vice President is so peculiar. That is why that will go beyond 60 days? Are you saying that?
Your Honor, actually, what the rules prescribe is 60 days.
Yun ang rules,
Yes.
di ba? Now, Mr. Chairman, just a short manifestation. Ito ngayon, ang problema. Kasi we are conducting this inquiry in aid of legislation because we have to have a legislative action in this case. Again, part of my manifestation, Mr. Chair, we have to review that 180 days because that is too long. Kasi pwede kasi mangyari talaga na last day of that 180 days sa kanila sagutin yung appeal. Magpadala ng appeal. Then after that, under the rules, is another 60 days. And it will take 8 months, Mr. Chairman. That's why, again, it was already discussed in the previous hearing in my committee. And I want to appeal to the COA to please have an amendment on such, because that is not a law. That is just a policy, an IRR of the COA. And Mr. Chairman, allow me to discuss furthermore later. But as of now, Mr. Chairman, I would like to manifest that iyon po ang problema ng COA. Because 180 days and another 60 days, it's too long to give justice to the funds being appropriated by any agency. I'm not just pointing to the office of the Vice President. It happens even in any agency, and even with regards to the case under my committee, in the case of Mamba, Governor Mamba, until now the COA has not yet submitted its final report. That's why, again, I'm appealing to the COA. Last year budget niyo pa. And hopefully, bukas nakasala kayo, di ba? Kaya lang may quadcom ako bukas. Kasi kung wala akong quadcom, sisingilin ko ulit kayo because this issue has been taking too long since last year pa, Mr. Chairman. And that's, as of now, Mr. Chairman, I end my manifestation and I will proceed later with the specifics with regards to the issue about the COA audit report of the Office of the Vice President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you po. We will now recognize the Honorable Vice Chairman J. Kong-hun.
Just a statement, Mr. Chair. The purpose of this inquiry is not to attack anyone, but to shed light on matters that affect our nation's governance. Refusing to testify under oath sends a signal that there is something to avoid. If there is nothing to conceal, why not take the oath? It is the basic act of accountability that all public officials must be willing to undertake. When a public official refuses to take an oath, it opens to questions about the truthfulness of their statement. Taking the oath is not just a legal formality, it is a commitment to honesty. Any refusal to do so undermines trust in public statements. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Tapos na? Wala na? Thank you. Honorable J. Kong-hun. Yes, Honorable Lara.
Chair, just a manifestation also with regards to COA. Relative dun sa binanggit ni Chairman Paduano, considering na lahat ng mga investigation natin when it comes to public funds, ang number one na kailangan natin is the COA. No, kasi alam naman natin ang role ng COA dito. So, ang ano ko lang, sa lahat, nabanggit niya yung Mamba case and others. Palagi ang germane na issue here is the duration from which na-finalize nyo yung report ninyo. So, eto from your end, no, Mr. Chair, sana maparating ito kay Chairman ng COA once and for all, no, na yung you try to review yung mga policies na finormulate ninyo, no, kasi eto sa mga pagdinig namin, no, ang the whole COA process from the time na magkaroon ng audit to AOM to notice of disallowance to the filing of proper cases, palagi niyong tandaan na Mr. Chair, on the part of COA, yung dokumento talaga na manggagaling sa kanila is a very, very crucial. If not, yun yung talagang magdidiin kung meron talagang paglabag sa lahat na ito. Katulad ng issues natin ngayon, no, dito sa pinag-uusapan natin ngayon. So, eto po, with due respect sa COA, no, yung mga you should also take in consideration all the processes, notwithstanding the dilatory tactics that causes the delay. No, kasi katulad nito, 180 days bibigyan nyo from which to appeal. Baka meron ulit ito, isasubmit ulit, no, na nag-i-issue ng o mag-sisik ng another extension of time na pinagbibigyan ninyo. So, eto, just to manifest, Mr. Chair, if it would be formulated and legislated, itong mga ganitong mga bagay in terms of duration, kasi alam naman natin ang purpose, number one purpose ng lahat ng pagdinig natin dito sa Kongreso is in aid of legislation, no? Para hindi na maulit ito, kung pwede, mapaiksian natin, no, itong mga duration, in terms of duration, no, should be reviewed. Halos lahat ng cases involving government funds, kailangan ang final COA report for filing appropriate charges. And with due respect sa COA, Mr. Chair, tingin tuloy ng ating mga kababayan na kayo ang cause of delay ng pagpa-file ng mga proper charge. If not, no, in some cases, in cahoots tuloy ang tingin na nila sa inyo, which is not also fair, no, sa COA. No, pwede natin gawin, total, ang tagal nyo naman na ginagawa itong prosesong ito, Mr. Chair, ng COA. From your end, sana, kayo na mag-propose sa amin, no, kung paano natin mapabilis ang mga proseso natin. Kasi katulad nung binabanggit ni Chairman Paduano kanina, it's only a policy formulated din coming from the COA, Mr. Chair. So, ito, ang appeal ko lang, Mr. Chair, para lahat ito, para hindi nila ma-misinterpret na katulad nito, trabaho lang ginagawa natin, tapos baka iba ang ini-insinuate ng iba na nagpopolitika tayo dito. Ang ano ko lang, kung ma-shorten lahat ito or magawa ng policy talaga when it comes to COA, no, na mapabilis lahat itong mga proseso natin. So, yun lang, Mr. Chair, just to manifest.
Thank you. The next to interpolate is the Honorable Paul Ortega.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair. Short manifestation lang po. Marami pa rin po tayong tanong. Parang back to the future po yung nangyari sa atin, Mr. Chair. Doon po sa budget briefings nga before. But still, we will pursue our questions, sir. Pero since hindi nga po nag-oath si ating Vice President and she left early, hindi rin po siya, malamang hindi rin po siya sasagot ng mga tanong, Mr. Chair. And ipe-pursue pa rin natin yung mga katanungan natin, Mr. Chair. That's why I will ask nga po for the support of this committee. Magsasubmit po ako ng mga tanong na nais ko pong tanungin sa Office of the Vice President sa kayo mga iba't ibang ahensya po na nandito. At isasubmit ko po sa komite at aabangan po natin kung anong written na answers po ang ibibigay nila sa ating komite. Kasi may mga tanong po na galing naman po sa aming respectable districts. Hindi naman po namin alam kung paano namin sasagutin ng direkta yung mga tagalugar namin. Marahil po, pati yung mga ibang nagtanong po dito, may mga tanong din po pag umuwi sila sa kanilang districts on how the confidential funds and how the other funds were used. At kung bakit po iniiwasan yung mga tanong at kalahati po ng statement nga po kanina is puro naman po sa pamumulitika at sa susunod po na eleksyon. Total, yung mga tanong naman po is previous years at hanggang sa 2024, Mr. Chair. So, I will submit to this honorable committee yung mga tanong po na gusto po nating masagot ng Office of the Vice President, ng COA at saka ng DBM, Mr. Chair. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you. The next to interpolate, the chair recognizes the Honorable Ramon Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Mr. Chair, most of yung katanungan po natin, we were hoping to direct to the OVP. And we were expecting that this is no longer a budget hearing. At the very least, yung mga USEC and ASEC that were requested to be here would be around. But given na wala po sila at wala rin po tayong maitanong sa OVP, siguro initial questions lang po sa COA. But I will be reserving most of my questions for probably the next hearing kapag nandito na po yung appropriate representatives.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, may tanong lang po una ako sa 500 million na confidential funds ng OVP for fiscal year 2023 po, no? Noong 2022, nag-request po ng OVP ng 500 million para sa confidential funds for GAA 2023. Is this correct po? May we ask any representative of the COA? Of the DBM pala po, mas appropriate siguro.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Mr. Chair.
Yusek Toledo.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. For 2023, there was a request for confidential fund for 500 million pesos, Mr. Chair.
And the 500 million that was requested by the OVP was approved by the DBM and was consequently also approved by the House and the Senate. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Chair. It was approved by the Congress, yes.
Mr. Chair, would the good USEC be aware po kung ano po yung justification that was propounded by the OVP to the DBM for the request of 500 million?
DBM, please continue. Kung Roch, kanino po ninyo ina-address yung question?
Sa DBM rin po.
Yes. Yusek
I
Toledo,
believe po,
please.
Mr. Chair, the justification of any budget proposed for the President's budget, yung NEP po, ay dumadaan sa DBM. So I think they would have they would be in the proper position to answer this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Basically, the proposed confidential fund for 2020 is the same as they used for 2022 that was approved through the release of the contingent fund, which is basically for the good governance engagement and social services projects of the Office of the Vice President, which I related earlier as far as where to use that. Basically for the safe implementation of various projects activities of the Office of the Vice President across its satellite offices. Okay, so also the conduct of its official engagements and functional representation in the international and local events. Also the implementation of various projects and activities relevant to national security and peace and order, and implementation of the same with proper security and safety protocols for the benefit of the institution, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would agree that those would be activities precisely within the purview of the use of confidential funds. And I believe that if that was the justification given to the DBM, it would be understandable po na ito po yung talagang i-approve nila. However, Mr. Chair, in hindsight, in retrospect, which is 2020, there were actually signs already na there was confusion as to the proper use of these funds. If I recall, there's an article actually in which a certain attorney Munsayak in 2022 mentioned in justifying the program of the OVP, and actually this is something that I was supposed to ask the OVP. Pero dahil wala po sila, I will just relay what I have read. And hopefully they can just confirm it at a later time. Ang sabi po nila, sa ilalim ng good governance program ng OVP, kasama po dapat sa confidential funds usage yung libreng sakay, pagbabag o campaign, OVP food trucks, livelihood programs like Magnegosyo Taday, which should be noted is the precise program that is suffering from 0.4% utilization rate, no? And medical assistance and burial assistance. Mr. Chair, I would like to ask the DBM, had they known, if kung ito po yung magiging justification for CIF request for 500 million, would in his opinion, would this have been allowed by the Secretary of the DBM? Was this within the purview of the use of confidential funds, Mr. Chair?
Yusek Toledo, please answer.
Mr. Chair, I think some of those programs or projects that were mentioned should all be good to be implemented by the other different implementing agencies. So I will leave that to my answer that the confidential funds should always be related to what has been for the good governance project, engagement and social services project of the Office of the Vice President.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I agree with that. But on its face po, no, yung binanggit ni Attorney Monsayak, would this be considered yung security requirements for the implementation? Kasi po, very general lamang po ang sinabi niya eh. It just mentioned the programs itself, and I don't know if my security component po yung, for example, libreng sakay. I don't know kung may security component yung Magnegosyo Taday. Definitely, maybe not with the Pagbabago campaign. Medical assistance, burial assistance.
Mr. Chair, as a matter of fact, we have some sort of exclusive use for the confidential fund. Basically, if I may enumerate it, Mr. Chair, one is purchase of information for necessary for formulation and implementation of programs relevant to national security, peace and order, rental of transportation vehicles and maintenance of safe houses used for confidential activities, purchase of rental supplies, equipment, among others, for confidential operations, payment of rewards to informers, subject, of course, to guidelines, and then uncover or prevent illegal activities that may pose danger to the agency or its personnel or property, and I guess others that may be authorized by the, of course, the General Appropriations Act and special laws.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think, of course, I can't speak for the committee, but we can consider na parang outside of the purview of the enumerated instances, yung ginawang justification po nitong Attorney Monsayak. But this is something, I guess, that we'll pursue at a later time. Mr. Chair, may I ask po, in relation to the good governance program, and I think I could ask this to the COA, if it'll be okay. Is there a requirement for a fiscal and financial plan when it comes to the good governance program? Is this a requirement when disbursing?
Who will answer po sa COA?
Mr. Chair, good morning.
Please identify yourself.
I'm Fahadin, or the audit team leader of the OBP.
Okay, please continue.
Yes, yes, Mr. Chair. For the question relative to the work and financial plan, I think I do not have the knowledge if it is required, but then based on our regulation, it is not part of the regulatory or documentary requirements for the disbursement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, move to the next question. The rest of this po, requires answers from the OVP, but I will reserve that for the next session po siguro, next hearing. Mr. Chair, in relation to the procurement for OVP satellites not fully compliant with the procurement law, pagkupo po ni VP Duterte noong July 2022,
August Gutierrez, you still have 1 minute.
1 minute, okay. It was reported that satellite offices would be part of the thrust of the OVP. And at that time, there were still no office spaces. Was the DBM, I'd like to direct this to DBM, Mr. Chair. Was the DBM made aware of the OVP's intention to set up satellite offices? I understand sa line item, wala pong specific dun, no? So OVP, perhaps this was by object of expenses. Basically, yung tanong ko po is, aware po ba yung DBM of the intention of the OVP to set up satellite offices?
BBM?
Mr. Chair, that's part of the request when they requested for the confidential fund.
Confidential
Contingent.
fund?
Yeah, contingent.
Contingent fund po yung ginamit.
Yeah,
So this
Mr.
is
Chair.
this question is not about the CIF.
Yeah.
So out of the contingent fund, dun lumabas. So it was not part of any line item. Mr. Chair, in the history of the DBM po, and I know I've asked this during the budget deliberation, but I'd like to reiterate, has this been an occurrence for previous administrations? Has any other vice president requested the establishment of satellite offices? And if they did they source it from the contingent fund?
Mr. Chair, we'll just check our record, but I can't recall if there was such a request then in the previous administration.
Of course. And I think this was answered previously kasi wala naman po talaga. But we'd like to get a final determination by the DBM, a final confirmation na wala po talaga. Now, based on the 2022 OVP annual audit report, there was a finding that hindi po dumaan sa maayos na procurement or bidding yung property, plant, and equipment and semi-expendable properties for the satellite offices. Would the COA be able to expound on this annual finding in the annual audit report, Mr. Chair?
COA?
Mr. Chair, Marvin Joshua G. Politic po. Yes, Mr. Chair, we confirm that in the 2022 RR, we noted that some of the semi-expendable and PPE were procured through reimbursement and not fully compliant with the RA 9184.
Mr. Chair, this is interesting. What is the proper mode po? We don't do reimbursement. Dapat may specific item po ito and we would do competitive bidding po ba? Or is there a specific mode that is allowable under the COA regulations?
For purchase of equipment and PPE, there are alternative modes of procurement under the 9184. For example, a small value procurement, emergency purchase if the need and if there is emergency identified for the purchase.
And in your finding po through the Honorable Chair, was there any justification for this and none of those three would include by reimbursement po no sa kanilang officers. So was there any justification for this mode of acquisition, Mr. Chair? Mode of procurement, I mean?
So the management stated that due to the time constraints imposed by the RA 9184, the procurement unit was unable to process the requests at that time of the opening of the satellite offices. So the property unit, on the other hand, does not have the necessary office equipment at the time of the opening. It was agreed during the discussion meeting with their office that reimbursement would be the best option to address the immediate need.
Mr. Chair, is that a valid, yung sabi po ng management, is that a valid excuse sa kanilang opinion po? Would this count as irregular? Ano po nga yung basis natin sa COA for having findings? You have an acronym po, no? Irregular, excessive. Can you run us down through that, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, these are not compliant with the 9184 or can be considered as irregular.
So irregular po siya. But sorry, to enlighten us lang po, ano po yung basis po natin? I remember it was mentioned during the budget hearing. I forgot lang yung shortcut ninyo. You have irregular, unconscionable. Can you give us, I think it was 5?
Yes, Mr. Chair, can I answer?
Yes, through the Honorable Chair, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have illegal expenditure, irregular, unnecessary, extravagant, unconscionable, and excessive.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in this case, mukhang irregular, highly irregular po yung procurement process.
Last 2 minutes.
Okay lang, Mr. Chair. I will not take up any more time. The rest of it naman po would be properly answered by the OVP. So in that case, Mr. Chair, I will yield to the other interpellators. Maraming salamat po, COA and DBM. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We will proceed to the next interpellator, the Honorable Congresswoman Luistro. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wish to manifest that the refusal of Her Excellency Vice President Sara Duterte to take her oath in today's hearing in the conduct of inquiry in aid of legislation is an affirmation of her stand, her position during the budget briefing of the OVP. And this representation wishes to manifest that when the resource speaker does not take her oath, then it follows that whatever statement she will provide, we call it could not hold any water. That being not under oath, the same cannot be used as an evidence in any inquiry, in any proceeding, Mr. Chair. In other words, her refusal to answer in the last budget briefing of the OVP is tantamount to her stand in today's inquiry of refusing to take her oath. That is for manifestation, Mr. Chair. And with that, Mr. Chair, I wish to remind the committee, our esteemed colleagues, and the Filipino people of the constitutional mandate that public office is a public trust. When there is a question, we're bound to answer. We're bound to explain. As a matter of fact, no less than the Philippine Constitution provides, we are accountable to the Filipino people at all times. We are now confronted by the issue on confidential fund. And I wish to emphasize, ang confidential fund po ay pera ng taong bayan. And we owe it to the people to explain kung paano ito ginastos, saan ito napunta, and to be specific, sinunod po ba natin ang joint circular regulating the use of confidential fund? Mr. Chair, I wish to raise as well, to invoke as well, and remind our esteemed colleagues that pursuant to the separation of power, we, the Congress, is exercising the power to legislate. Under this power, we also have the power of the purse. We can amend, we can revise, we can approve, and we can disapprove the budget that was proposed to us by the executive. And I wish to remind as well that the best instrument which shows the power of the purse of the people is no less than the General Appropriations Bill, which is an embodiment of the allocation for the entire Philippine government, which is the result of the legislative process of the Congress. In other words, ang budget po ng ating bansa.
The all-new Honda BRV. Brave the next level.
Legislate to be able to make sure that the power of the purse is properly exercised. We are granted as well by the oversight power, and that is to make sure that all our legislations, that includes the budget of the national government, the General Appropriations Act, are well complied with by our fellow public servants. And to make sure, and as a consequence of this oversight power, we have this inquiry in aid of legislation. So I just wish to remind the Filipino people, and that includes the OVP, ito po ay trabaho ng Kongreso. Busisiin ang budget. And not only that, to exercise the oversight power to make sure na yun pong ating mga nakaraang legislation, that includes the General Appropriations Act, ay nagamit ng tama ng mga ahensya ng gobyerno. I hope that the OVP will be enlightened to address the issues instead of attacking this institution, of politicizing, and matters concerning politics, Mr. Chair. Third, Mr. Chair, we should be uniform in the application of our rules. if we are guided by the constitutional mandate that public office is a public trust, if we observe malfeasance, misfeasance, and non-feasance in the LGUs, as a matter of fact, we have pending inquiry in aid of legislation concerning LGUs. Kung iniimbestigahan po natin ang Office of the Mayor, kung iniimbigastahan po natin ang Office of the Governor, by equality under the law, we should conduct an investigation as well to the Office of the Vice President. And I wish to thank the Honorable Valeriano for taking a stand before the plenary to initiate this inquiry in aid of legislation to address the observation not only of this representation, but of our fellow members of the Committee on Appropriations about the irregularities which we have seen already in the disbursement of fund. As a matter of fact, not only of the confidential fund, but even the regular allocation of the OVP. With that, Mr. Chair, may I proceed to my question for the COA. Kanina
Yes.
po,
But after your lengthy manifestation, you have already
Mr. Chair.
consumed 4
just
minutes.
one question, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair,
Just one question.
Yes, the Honorable Marcoleta.
May I offer a counter manifestation, Mr. Chair?
Later po, 1 minute na lang po siya and then
Kasi
I will
baka
record.
makalimutan yung continuity, yung flow ng discussion. I'd like to ask only, Mr. Chair, by way of manifestation, is there anybody who is questioning the power of the purse of Congress? Is there anybody who is questioning the legislative function and oversight function of Congress? Is there? Because if there is none, then we are not supposed to overextend the discussion or any manifestation because nobody is questioning that. And I think nobody could question that. Even the privileged speech of the Honorable Valeriano. I think the proper question there, the proper title is not asserting the power of the purse. We should not assert it because that power is inherent in us. Asserting or not asserting that power is of no moment. Yun po ay birthright. Yun po is inherent right of Congress. And let me make of record, the office of the Vice President, to my mind, did not undermine the power of the purse. When she personally came in the first hearing and presented herself, including the budget by way of a PowerPoint presentation. She made a presentation, Mr. Chair. And after that, she made a categorical statement that she said, I forgo, Madam Chair, I forgo my opportunity to defend the budget of the Office of the President by way of question and answer, and instead I leave it to the discretion of the House of Representatives on their decision to decide on the proposal as presented. This is a very respectful answer, Mr. Chair. I did not find any offensive remark in that particular statement. She gave the entire House of Representatives the entire discretion and the entire right to decide on the proposal she presented before us. Why would we blame her for saying that she disrespected Congress? No, sir. I think it was triggered by the fact that questions were asked in relation to the confidential and intelligence funds. To my mind, Mr. Chair, these particular funds were subjected to a notice of disallowance. But the notice of disallowance by its nature, by its very nature, Mr. Chair, is contestable. It is appealable. It is yet to be explained. And initially, as explained by the representative of COA, the notice of disallowance suffered by way of supporting documents, by way of non-compliance with certain requisites. What if the Vice President is able to provide all the supporting documents? What if finally she is able to come up with the requisites required in order for you to consider that all these funds are eventually are allowable and they are not disallowed. And chances are she may be able to do that. Hindi po final judgment ang notice of disallowance. As a matter of fact, based on COA's own representation the other day, the Vice President received the notice of disallowance only on August 24, 2024, which means, Mr. Chair, the Vice President has 6 months within which to reply and make an answer. That is correct, Madam COA. So, 6 months is up to February 2025. We should give her all the allowance. We should all give her the time. Because 6 months is 6 months. So why are we rushing to make a judgment? As a matter of fact, as I have already initiated earlier, Mr. Chair, when you said that anything we can discuss in this committee provided it is of public interest. And you said that intelligence funds and confidential funds are public interest. But I said, because of our own rules, we should make a prior and preliminary determination that is directly and principally connected to malfeasance, misfeasance, or non-feasance. We have not made that determination. How can we now begin questioning whether or not the intelligence funds covered by an initial notice of disallowance is already directly and principally connected with non-feasance or misfeasance or malfeasance? Madam COA, how many agencies of government today are subjected to notice of disallowance? Do you have a number? How many agencies today?
With all due respect to the
But that is a question I will leave, and I will terminate my manifestation, Madam.
Yes, but I
believe,
would like
Mr.
to
Chair, that
respond.
this is still my time.
Yes, but I would like to respond to your manifestation, Congressman Marcoleta.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chair. Parliamentary inquiry.
What is the parliamentary inquiry of the
I would
Honorable
like to
Abante?
ask the Honorable Marcoleta, is he rebuking this committee?
What is the question, Mr. Chair?
Are you rebuking this committee?
Why am I supposed to rebuke the committee? I am
You
not.
have been saying things for a while.
What?
You have been rebuking this committee.
You are saying that.
We're not blaming the Vice President on this.
I asked
Honorable
the question.
Marcoleta, we
I asked
are
the
not
question. You do not have
blaming
the right to suspend.
1 minute suspension is declared by the chair.
Move to suspend.
Before I recognize the Honorable Congressman Luistro, let me first respond to the manifestation of the Honorable Marcoleta. Let me cite Section 4, Rule 4, Section 1, last paragraph, which provides that the filing or pendency of a case before any court, tribunal, quasi-judicial, or administrative body shall not stop or abate any inquiry conducted to carry out a legislative purpose. What we are doing right now is we are doing our mandate. This hearing is in aid of legislation. So wala pa naman po tayong inaakusahan dito. The fact that the issue is still with COA and is still pending appeal, it does not stop this committee from conducting an inquiry in aid of legislation to conduct or to carry out our legislative purpose. So, yun lamang po. With this, I would like to give the... Ilang minuto pa po?
1 minute.
Ma'am, you still have 1 more minute.
Mr. Chair, in response to the Honorable Marcoleta, this representation did not say that the OVP is questioning the power of the Congress. However, Mr. Chair, I wish to state for the record, how else will you interpret her refusal to answer? How else will you interpret her refusal to take an oath? I think, Mr. Chair, the only reasonable interpretation on her gestures is that she refused to participate in the investigation or inquiry in aid of legislation that we are conducting. Secondly, Mr. Chair, about the notice of disallowance, we take cognizance of the fact that this is not yet final and executory. As a matter of fact, the COA commented that the OVP has a period of 180 days, equivalent to 6 months, to solicit to make an appeal for the purpose of seeking for a possible reversal of the ND. However, Mr. Chair, kapag ba may ND, bawal na bang malaman ito ng publiko? Kapag ba may ND, bawal na bang imbestigahan ito? And it is on this light that I invoke that public office is a public trust, and at all times we are accountable to the Filipino people. In response to his comment about the possibility of the ND being reversed, I think I made a manifestation already in the last budget briefing of the DepEd. If in the event that the ND is reversed, in spite of having this inquiry already, the COA is not precluded. The COA is not prevented from sharing to the Filipino people that the OVP was able to justify, and therefore we are reversing the ND. In conclusion, Mr. Chair, I wish to emphasize that there is no law which prevents the Congress, which prevents the COA from discussing, deliberating on the subject matter of the notice of disallowance. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I still have a question?
I will give you 1 minute.
Para lang po sa understanding ng mga Pilipino, pwede po bang pakidistinguish in layman's term confidential fund from regular fund in 2 aspects? One is procurement, second is liquidation. Because we've been discussing about CF, confidential fund. The question is, naiintindihan ho ba tayo ng mga Pilipinong mamamayan? Now, I think it's high time for us to explain. COA, ano po ba ang diferensya o pagkakaiba? Confidential from regular with respect to one is procurement and second is liquidation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
COA, any representative from COA? Yes, Attorney Camora.
As to the confidential fund, it refers to a lump sum amount provided to NGAs, LGUs, and COBs for their confidential expenses, which expenses pertain to or are related to surveillance activities in civilian government agencies that are intended to support the mandate or operations of the agency. The audit of the confidential fund is based on the...
Can we explain on the process of procurement or disbursement? You said it is a lump sum fund. May procurement process po ba kapag confidential fund?
Since it involves confidential activities,
There is none.
There is no procedures on
No
procurement.
compliance to procurement law is necessary for confidential fund.
Yes,
There
Madam
is no
Chair.
posting, there is no bidding. Tama po ba?
Tama po, Mr. Chair.
And with respect to the regular fund, we have to comply. In other words, the law on procurement and bidding has to be followed. Tama po?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Yes po, tama po.
Yes. Now let's go to liquidation. Ano pong diferensya ng confidential fund with the regular fund in terms of liquidation?
Mr. Chair, yung sa liquidation ng confidential fund is provided for under the joint circular. So, hindi po necessary na sinusunod namin yung sa regular fund.
Summary and in layman's term, ma'am, how do you make it more understandable for the Filipino people? Pagdating ng liquidation, distinguish natin CF from regular fund.
Mr. Chair, sa liquidation po ng CF, kung ano po ang required ng joint circular na documents to be submitted, yun po yung kailangan nilang isubmit, otherwise deficient yung liquidation nila.
Which is less compared to the regular fund.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Way
Mr.
less
Chair.
than the requirements for the liquidation of regular fund.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
In short, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, ano po ba yung mga requirements sa regular fund for purposes of liquidation na hindi nyo hinihingi sa confidential fund? In brief lang po.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I am only aware of the requirements ng sa confidential, so may I ask the help of ano.
Mr. Chair, may just manifest my request that I hope to hear a very clear explanation from the
Maybe we
COA
can,
on our next hearing.
Maybe we can address that question to the state auditor,
Yes, Mr.
Attorney
Chair.
Tomawis. Would you like to respond to the query of the Honorable Luistro?
Mr. Chair, for the information, for the regular fund, for the liquidation of regular fund, it is subject to the COA circular wherein there is a documentary requirements required to be submitted. Then for the confidential fund, I have no exact information because it is based on the another joint circular. So there are two circulars to be required to be complied with. The COA circular, which is the documentary requirements for regular audit or for the regular transactions, and for the confidential fund, there is that joint circular that must be complied with.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect to the COA, this representation is not satisfied with the answer. So may I request for a better and clearer explanation on how we distinguish CF from regular fund in terms of procurement, that is one, and in terms of liquidation, that is two. We will be looking forward, Mr. Chair, to listening to the discussion and explanation of the COA on our next hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
The
Chairman.
Honorable Vice Chair Acop.
May I just ask some clarification, which is connected with the questions of the Honorable Luistro?
With the indulgence of the Honorable Junicio, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I know from COA or from DBM, doon po sa mga GA natin, magkahiwalay po yung provision ng intelligence at sa confidential funds. Di po ba? Would you agree with that?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes. So, bakit po magkaiba? Bakit may separate provision yung intelligence fund, may separate provision yung confidential fund?
Attorney Camora, please respond.
Mr. Chair, saga din po yung difference actually po, which is ang intelligence fund po ay refers to those intelligence information gathering of uniformed and military personnel, and it has something to do with national security, while sa confidential expenses is for the civilian government po.
Specifically for what?
That are intended to support the mandate or operations of the agency.
Now, may I know if they are also required to submit reports of the utilization of these funds?
Intel funds po,
Both
Mr. Chair.
funds.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
To whom should they submit reports regarding their utilization?
Mr. Chair, as to the confidential funds, they need to submit for NGAs to the President of the Philippines, the Senate President, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and to other agencies to the Department Secretary. As to the Intel Fund, they submit their accomplishment report to the President of the Philippines.
Now, may I know what agency would look after the reporting of such? Sino po ang tumitingin kung ito'y nako-comply? Because I think this is part of the GA, and the GA is a law.
Mr. Chair, it is part of the required documents that they have to submit.
Sino po ang tumitingin na dapat nako-comply ang mga ito? Which agency of government? Kasi lahat po ng GAA may provision tungkol sa intelligence fund at saka confidential fund. It is always part of the GAA regarding provisions for the utilization of such. Di po ba? Oh, so sinabi nyo, it is required that they should submit reports. But who looks after the compliance of these agencies concerned?
Is it not the audit of the COA po?
It is also not the jurisdiction of DBM?
Mr. Chair, I think if it's on the utilization of funds, it's more on the COA.
Kaya nga po, it refers to intelligence and confidential funds. May reportorial requirements po ito. Now, who looks after the compliance of such?
Mr. Chair, kung yung sa liquidation po, sa COA po siya nagpupunta yung reports po. And then, yung sa reporting agencies, it's the accomplishment report po of
Kayo po
Intel and
nagsabi
Confidential
kanina
Fund.
na yung confidential fund, the reports must be made to the President of the Republic of the Philippines, doon po sa Senate President representing the Senate, at saka yung Speaker of the House representing the House. So, how do you determine whether this is complied with?
Part of the required documents is a proof of submission to the above agencies.
So kayo?
Yes po, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, kayo pala ang may jurisdiction nito na nagsasubmit sila ng mga reports in compliance with the provision of the GAA.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Kaya po, it's one of the required documents, yung proof po of submission.
No, nagpakalayo-layo pa tayo, madam. Kayo pala eh. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you po. The Honorable Senior Deputy Speaker Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is recognized for his manifestation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and fellow members of this 19th Congress and this good government and public accountability.
Boss.
As an ex officio member of this committee on good government and public accountability, please permit me the liberty to state that the legislative inquiry undertaken by this committee forms an integral part of its power to conduct legislative inquiries in aid of legislation. And in this case, as it relates to the exercise of the power of the purse of Congress itself. The Vice President, as an invited resource person, unfortunately refused to take an oath to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth before this committee. We have allowed the same only in this particular instance. In deference and with utmost respect to the office of the Vice President. Mr. Chairman, we also underscore that refusal to take an oath before this committee or any legislative hearing in Congress should not be considered as a precedent, as it goes against the power of Congress to conduct legislative inquiries under Article 6, Section 21 of the Constitution, as discussed in the case of Arnold versus Nazareno. This power of inquiry is coextensive with the power to legislate. That's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Valeriano is, before I recognize the Honorable Marcoleta, just a quick manifestation with the indulgence of Honorable Marcoleta, quick manifestation of the Honorable Congressman Valeriano. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And in relation to the manifestation of Senior Deputy Speaker Gonzales, ito pong committee hearing natin ay initial deliberation and preliminary determination of my privileged speech last September 3. Partly nung speech ko po, and I quote again, hindi pera ng pangalawang Pangulo ang Office of the Vice President budget para sa 2022, 2023, 2024 at 2025. Pondo ng bayan yan. At yung iba po, pagkakataon na sana niyang patunayan sa Kongreso at sambayanan kung sino ang naging beneficiary ng kanyang mga socio-economic programs. At doon po, nilagay ko rin sa kanilang 2025 budget proposal, mayroong 977,615 beneficiaries at meron ding 793 strategic partnership noong 2023. Ako po yung natuwa kanina sa pagdating ni Vice President dahil ang buong akala ko ay masasagot niya yung katanungan ko sa privilege speech. Subalit, sa pagtanggi niya po ng pag-take ng oath at halos hindi niya rin po sinagot ay nakakalungkot din po. At asahan po ninyo na kung sakali man na maging maayos ang kinalabasan ng COA findings, ako po ay nakahanda ulit na tumayo at magsalita ulit kung ano man ang magiging rekomendasyon ng Commission on Audit. Salamat po, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The Honorable Marcoleta is now recognized for his interpellation.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, sasamantalahin ko na po ang presence po ng mga kinatawan ng Commission on Audit. Gusto ko po sanang itanong mula sa kanila, ano-ano pong mga opisina ng ating pamahalaan o ahensya ang pinagkakalooban po ng intelligence and confidential funds?
Attorney Camora, please respond.
Confidential funds are given to NGAs, to LGUs, and some GOCCs po.
You can elaborate, Madam Representative, sino po sa mga LGUs ang binibigyan po ng intelligence and confidential funds?
Sa LGUs po, Depende po sa LGU, sa POP po nila, Mr. Chair.
Hindi po ba yung mga opisina ng mayor ay nakakatanggap ng intelligence and confidential funds?
As long as it is part of their budget, Madam Chair, ay Mr. Chair.
Kaya nga po tinatanong ko sa inyo, kayo po nakakaalam kasi kung sino-sino sa kanila. Karaniwan po yung opisina ng mayor, nakatatanggap po, maring hindi lahat, ngunit nakatatanggap po basically yung opisina ng mayor. Tama po?
According to the joint circular po, LGUs whose peace and order is a priority concern, sila po usually yung nag-allocate ng confidential funds.
Kaya nga po, base po sa record ninyo, may mga mayors po, opisina ng mayor ang nakatatanggap ng confidential and intelligence funds. Kasi po kayo ang nag-o-audit eh.
Yes po, Mr. Chair.
Para hindi na tayo magtagal, ganun lang kasi. Pati po opisina ng gobernador nakakatanggap din po ng ganung klaseng pondo, hindi po ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yun pong PNP nakakatanggap po.
Intelligence fund po sa
Opo,
PNP.
yung AFP nakakatanggap po.
Yes po, Mr.
Ang
Chair.
opisina po ng ating Pangulo ay nakakatanggap po ng intelligence funds.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Ngayon po sa mga karamihan po ng opisina ng mayor at opisina ng gobernador at alimpang mga LGUs na maaaring makatanggap nito, depende sa kanilang pangangailangan. Yung AFP at saka yung ating kapulisan at ang ating ang opisina po ng ating Panguluhan, masasabi po ba ninyo na merong na-issuean po ng notice or notices of disallowance sa napakaraming opisina na tumatanggap ng ganitong pondo?
Mr. Chair, pagka meron naman pong mga ibang agencies na
Kaya nga po gusto ko pong malaman, halimbawa 2022 at saka 2023, ballpark figures lang po, ilan po sa mga official at sa mga opisina ng mayor na nakatanggap ng confidential or intelligence funds ang subjected to notices of disallowance? Ilan po sa opisina ng gobernador, ganun din po yung tanong. At saka sa iba't ibang mga opisina po, para malaman lang natin, kahit ballpark figures lang, ilan po yung na-issue nyo na notices of disallowance concerning these types of funds?
Mr. Chair, wala po kaming data on the said information today because we only have data on the OVP po. I cannot give an exact number.
Bakit po? Kasasabi nyo lang na meron din kayong sinubject sa notice of disallowance eh. Bakit po yung opisina lang ng OVP ang meron kayong record?
Yung hawak po namin ngayon, Mr. Chair, since ito po yung subject ng inquiry, we are prepared as to the OVP. Pero as to other
O sige po, ganito na lang. Meron po ba kayong estimated na bilang ng na-issue nyo na kayo po kasi pag intelligence and confidential funds, kayo po yung auditing unit ang nakatoka para tingnan po ang pagkakagasta ng tipo ng fondong ito. Tama po?
Tama po, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Makapagsasabi po ba kayo ng estimated number? Ito po, kinabibilangan ng opisina ng mayor, ng gobernador, ng ISAP, ng kung ano-ano, ng siguro po, maski National Intelligence Security Council, AFP, ang kapulisan. Can you provide us a ballpark number of the notices of disallowance that your office has initially issued?
Mr. Chair, I cannot give you a ballpark figure now since hindi naman po ako involved sa entire ICFAO. So,
wala po bang isa sa inyo na nakaupo ngayon sa aming harapan ang makapagbibigay man lang ng estimated number? Napakarami po ng mayor, napakarami po ng gobernador.
Precisely, sir. Kaya sa ibang division, wala po akong...
Pwede ba natin sabing 100 or 500 notices of disallowance?
I cannot say po, Mr. Chair.
How can you help us? We are supposed to be doing this in aid of legislation. Kaya namin kayo pinatawag para tulungan nyo kami.
Mr. Chair,
Ang sabi po ng jurisprudence, which was quoted by no less than the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Reynato Puno, quoting various jurisprudence. Kasama na po yung Arnold versus Nazareno. There should be a legislative purpose. That's number one requirement. The number two requirement, there should be pertinency in relation to those legislative purpose. Kaya po
Congressman Marcoleta,
tinatanong
you
ko,
have 1 minute.
tinatanong ko po ngayon, gaano karami, o sige ganito na lang, marami ba ang na-issue nyo po na notices of disallowance in connection with these types of fund?
Sir, I really cannot give an exact number.
Hindi nga sabihin mo
today.
lang, marami.
Attorney,
Medyo marami.
Attorney Gamora, could you please submit the documents that the Honorable Marcoleta is requesting?
Yes.
Kasi sa ngayon, bago ako
As to the
magtapos,
numbers.
Mr. Chair, I want
Yes,
to wind
Mr.
up now.
Yes.
I want
please
to wind up now. Can you at least sabihin mo lang, marami, medyo marami. Pati ba naman yun, hindi mo... Ang dami po nating mayor dito sa buong Pilipinas, ang daming gobernador, pati kapulisan, ISAP, AFP. So sabi mo kanina, marami na-cover ng ilan ba?
Madam Chair, kung yung current year, I can answer na konti lang
on
po.
the average noon, yung halimbawa 2020, 2021, 2022, by way of your experience, by way of your former data,
Previous years po, I cannot say since bago lang po ako sa ICPAO. So, we could just provide you po with the documents.
Please wrap up. One last question, Congressman
what
Marcoleta.
about to the other members of the Commission on Audit? Through your experience, let's say in the last 10 years, wala kayong may bibigay? Alam po ninyo kung bakit ko tinatanong ito? Kung marami po kayong na-issue, at alam ko marami talaga, na notices of disallowance, pupuntahin natin dito lahat, hindi lang ang Office of the Vice President at dapat umupo dito. Lahat na po ng inisyuhan nyo ng notices of disallowance must sit here para makagawa po kami ng mas maganda, mas balanse na batas. Kung pag-uusapan po ay ang paggamit nitong intelligence funds. Do you understand, Madam?
Yes, I understand po the question. However,
So the committee is expecting to receive the number as well as the pertinent records pertaining to the issuance of notices of disallowance to the municipal mayors, governors, the PNP, the AFP, and such other agencies who are recipients of intelligence and confidential funds, because later on we will also summon them and sit with us. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair.
Congressman Marcoleta, you cannot move because you are not a member of this committee.
It's good that you have raised that, Mr. Chair. I am a vice chair of this committee. On September 4, I was surprised because I saw the journal that I was replaced by my comare. The question is, if I am replaced as a vice chair, does that automatically mean that I am removed as a member of this committee? Before you answer that, Mr. Chair, I think I need some legal basis before you answer that.
Yes, your removal from the vice chair, you were removed in a plenary session, House Rules. Now, under Section 28 of the House Rules, it provides that the House shall, upon the recommendation of the Committee on Rules, organize committees, their membership, and jurisdiction. Therefore, your removal as Vice Chair and member of the House was a plenary action, and therefore, it should be the plenary who should include you as member or as Vice Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, it was very clear that I was removed as Vice Chair. I was not removed as a member.
Because you were
There is this distinction between being a member and vice chair. If I
Yes,
was
but-
removed as vice chair,
but your appointment as vice chair, you were not appointed as member. Your appointment was as vice chair. So hindi naman po kayo
Mr.
in-appoint
Chair.
muna as member bago kayo ginawang vice chair. Your immediate appointment was as vice chairman, and therefore your removal as vice chair will remove you as member also. Yun po yun. And it's a
that is
plenary
your-
action. The committee has nothing to do with it.
that is your opinion, Mr. Chair, but I am expecting that some kind of a basis should be presented that upon removal of a vice chair, that automatically also removes him as a member of that committee. That's all I am asking, Mr. Chair.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
We have already answered the manifestation or the inquiry of the Honorable Marcoleta. Next to interpolate is sino?
Mr. Chairman,
Honorable.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, with the permission, with the indulgence of Honorable Dionisio, I would like to recognize the Honorable Paduano.
Mr. Chairman, under our rules, there's a motion for a point of order, and it is one of the highest motion that should be ruled by the chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, just a parliamentary procedure. The chairman should recognize the person that moves for a point of order, because that is one of the highest motion that should be recognized by the chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Noted. Honorable
Mr. Chair,
Honorable Vice Chairman Abante.
with the indulgence of Congressman Dionisio, may I be recognized?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, with the
just a point of inquiry. There's a motion for a point of order, and I have stated that is one of the highest, well, in fact, second highest motion. So the chairman should rule on that point of order that was raised by, I think it's Congressman Valerano.
My point of order is that the chairman already ruled na he was removed as vice chairman of the Committee on Good Government and Public Accountabilities. That's
It
all.
was already answered. It was already ruled, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you po.
Mr. Chair,
With the indulgence of Congressman Dionisio, the Chair would like to recognize the Vice Chairman Abante.
Mr. Chair, a while ago, COA has answered the question of Congressman Romy Acop as far as the difference between an intelligence fund and confidential fund. Can you please repeat that? Meron pagkakaiba ang intelligence fund saka ang confidential fund?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ang Intel Fund po, it is given to uniformed and military personnel and intelligence practitioners. And the purpose is for activities that have direct impact to national security. For confidential fund, they are given to civilian government agencies that are intended to support the mandate or operations of the agency.
Okay, Mr. Chair, therefore, ang intelligence fund, hindi confidential fund.
Yes, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
pero kanina, yung pong question ni Congressman Marcoleta, sinasabi niya palagi, confidential fund or intelligence fund. Am I right?
They are separate po.
Therefore, hindi po masyado naintindihan ni Congressman Marcoleta yung katanungan niya. Sapagkat kanya pinareho ang confidence fund at ang intelligence fund. Na gusto kong itanong, Mr. Chair, no? Sinabi niya kanina, sinabi mo na mayroong confidential fund ng mga mayors and governors, di ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Intelligence fund, meron pa silang intelligence fund?
Generally, wala po since hindi naman po sila uniformed personnel.
Okay, malinaw, Mr. Chair, na walang intelligence fund ang mga gobernador at mga mayor. Pero merong confidential fund. Yung pa ba? Tama ba ako?
Tama po, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Yung mga vice mayor at vice governor, meron ba intelligence fund o confidential fund? Meron ba silang confidential fund ang vice mayor at vice governor?
Actually, sir, it's per agency po. So, if, for example, ma-designate na SDO ang vice, pwede po siyang mabigyan.
Ano yun?
If
he is designated as mayor.
As SDO po. As SDO.
Sabihin, if the vice mayor is designated as mayor, magkakaroon siya, correct?
As mayor po. As SDO po.
Ano SDO?
Special Disbursing Officer.
Special Disbursing Officer.
Yes.
Ay kung hindi, wala siyang confidential fund.
Yes.
Therefore, regularly, walang confidential fund ang vice mayor at ang vice governor.
Yes.
Ayan. Katulad din po yan ng Pangulo. Ang Pangulo dapat magkaroon ng confidential fund. Tama ho ba ako?
Kung based sa GAA po, tama po.
Pero ang Vice President, hindi kinakailangan magkaroon ng confidential fund. Am I right?
Not in...
Am I right? Not necessarily correct. Following my question on the line of questioning that I have with the Vice Governor and the Vice Mayor.
Sa NGAs po kasi, sir, what is expressly provided in the GAA? In the GAA po.
Then normally, katulad ng, I'm just following the question that I asked, di ba? Sabi mo kanina, yung Vice Governor at yung Vice Mayor, normally, wala yung confidential fund. Correct?
Yes, Madam. Mr.
Unless
Chair.
otherwise, they've been designated as what?
As SDO, Mr.
SDO, okay. Ganon din naman ang Pangulo at ang Vice President. Correct? Kung yung Vice President designated din na ganyan, mayroon siyang confidential fund. Am I right?
Mr. Chair, what we only know is whoever is given confidential funds in the GAA can use...
Siguro ang DBM pwede makasagot niyan. USEC, pwede mo ba sagutin to?
Mr. Chair.
Yusek Toledo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there is a provision in the GAA kung sino yung nabigyan po natin ng confidential fund, which is basically na-identify doon sa bawat GA po natin. For example, for 2023, nabigyan po natin ng ang mga ahensya ng gobyerno ng confidential fund from OP, tapos doon sa Office of the Vice President, at mayroon din sa DA, mayroon din sa DepEd, may DNRO. So all the way po, may listahan po tayo ng confidential funds na binibigyan natin sa bawat ahensya.
Yung po bang binigay nating confidential funds sa Vice President, is that normal? Is that a normal procedure? Is that a normal procedure or not? O ito lang ang kahilingan? Kahilingan lang po ito.
There was releases po natin in the previous administration, even Mr. Chair. So I think part of that, at may request po sila, so we provided them.
Kahilingan, request, di ba? But it is not normal procedure. Si Vice President Lenny po ba, mayroon siyang confidential fund? Vice President Lenny Robredo? Nagkaroon ba siya ng confidential fund? O hindi siya humiling?
I will check, Mr. Chair, of the data we have already for a while.
Yung ibang naging Vice President, for example, like Vice President Cabayan, Noli de Castro, meron po pang confidential fund?
As Mr. Chair, as far as for the Vice President Leonard Bredo, wala pong confidential funds.
Ayan, wala.
Binigay natin.
Vice President de Castro, wala din, di ba?
I think wala rin.
Vice President De Laurel, wala rin.
If I, that's too long. Sorry, sir.
Hindi ba, bata pa kayo noon?
Wala pa. Yes, Mr. Chair, sorry for that. Pero yes, Mr. Chair, probably from the previous administration lately, as mentioned, si Vice Mayor, President Leonard Bredo, wala pong confidential fund.
For USEC Toledo, taga saan po kayo, Toledo?
Sir, I'm from Region 1, North, Region 1 po ako.
Region 1, yes. Sa Ilocos?
Pangasinan, sir.
Saan?
From Pangasinan, Mr. Chair.
Pangasinan?
Yes, sir.
Baka mag-anak kayo na misis ko. Toledo ang misis ko eh. Taga
Please wrap
Pangasinan
up,
din.
Congressman Abante.
Oh, hindi, natanong ko lang. Kamag-anak ko to eh. Okay. Teka lang. Meron pa akong tanong sandali eh. So therefore, Mr. Chair, it is not a normal procedure for the Vice President to have confidential funds because the previous Vice Presidents did not ask for any confidential fund, Mr. Chair. That is what I'm trying to say. So therefore, this is just a request from the Vice President. And being a very courteous DBM, you have given the Vice President confidential fund because if that is normal procedure and according to law, you should have given already confidential fund to the Vice President now. Di ba? Tama ba ako?
Yes, Mr. Chair, you're right.
Ayun. O gusto ko lang po malaman, Mr. Chair, ng taong bayan natin na hindi po normal procedure na magkaroon ng confidential fund ang Vice President sapagkat yung mga previous na Vice President ay hindi po nagkaroon ng confidential. Ito po'y kahilingan lamang. Kaya ang tanong natin dito, bakit kinakailangan magkaroon ng confidential fund ang Vice Presidente? Tulad po ng tanong ni Congressman Marcoleta, wala na po siya rito, yung mayor, yung governor, maaaring okay yon. Pero yung vice mayor at yung vice governor, normally, wala. Yun lang po, Mr. Chair. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you. Before I recognize Congressman Pao Ortega, I would just like to make a short manifestation. That is precisely the reason and the purpose of this committee hearing because this is in aid of legislation. Now, we are seeing loopholes sa mga batas po natin, kaya nga po ginagawa po natin ito so that we will be able to draft or enact laws that will help us set certain parameters with respect to this issue. Kasi ngayon lang po natin nakikita to eh. So with that, the Honorable Ortega is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Of course, with the indulgence of Congressman Dionisio. Yes,
okay,
please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would just like to include for the consumption of the committee, Mr. Chair, and for the honorable, the questions of the Honorable Abante. And to your point and manifestation, Mr. Chair, we do agree na kaya nga po natin tinitignan to dahil nagkakaroon po ng mga problema sa loopholes yung batas na nagagawa. So for the year 2000, 5.1 million under Vice President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. 2002, 5.1 million under Chofisto Gingona Jr. 2005 to 2010, 6 million under Vice President Noli De Castro. 2011 under Vice President Jejo Marbinay. 2016 to 2022 under VP Lenny Robredo, 0. And under the current Vice President, Mr. Chair, 2023 is 500 million, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Congressman Abante.
Now, I do realize that it is upon the power of Congress to give, allow confidential fund. It is not the power of DBM, correct? Upon the power of Congress. Therefore, the Vice President should still be thankful that she was given a confidential fund by the power of Congress. Yun po yung gusto kong sabihin din sa inyo.
Thank you. The Chair would like to recognize the Honorable Dionisio for his interpellation.
Mr. Chair, sa wakas daw po. Hindi. Ang tatanong ko lang po kasi kung bakit napakaginaw dito ngayon. Hindi, Mr. Chair, biro lang. Marami po salamat, Ginoong Tagapangulo. po sa pagkakataon na makapagtanong ng konting clarificatory questions. Naalala ko lang si Ma'am sa COA. Ma'am, magandang hapon po sa inyo. Kayo po yung nakatabi ko last time dun sa nakaraang hearing. It's a pleasure to meet you again, everyone sa ating mga resource speakers from COA. Meron na po akong konting katanungan, if you could enlighten this humble representation, ma'am. Regarding po doon sa procurement process na ginagawa natin sa pag-acquire dito sa Office of the Vice President or procurement process in general, ano po ba yung mga steps? Briefly lang, ma'am. Ano po ba yung mga steps na dinadaanan ng mga bidders?
May I ask the help of our ATL since wala pong procurement sa confidential?
Yusek Toledo, could you please respond to the query of the Honorable Dionisio?
May I request, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, of the request and query, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I was just simply asking very briefly, ano po ba yung proseso ng procurement process? Very briefly, dinadaanan ng isang bidder.
Okay. Based doon sa rule po natin sa 9184 po, syempre po ang procurement po natin ay dumadalat. Normally, it's through bidding process po siya, wherein, of course, the bidders, contractors will have to submit their bidding documents and that it will be processed and evaluated by the BAC po. That's initially the process.
Meron pong ano yan, di ba? Ang tawag doon yung pre-bid conference.
Yes.
Tapos meron tayong public bidding, bid evaluation rating, tsaka post-qualification. Tama po ba?
Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Chair.
The reason why I was asking this question, Mr. Chair, para makita lang yung maraming steps ang dinadaanan ng ating gobyerno para mabusisi maigi yung mga bidders na nag-a-apply sa ating gobyerno. So maraming steps na dinadaanan po. Tama po ba yun?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Yes, Your Honor.
Opo. Yung tanong ko lang po, I think na-mention na rin, pero gusto ko malaman, categorically, sino po ba sa DepEd or ang nagde-determine ng eligibility and qualifications ng isang bidder?
Mr. Chair, probably it's not specific for DepEd, but there is also what we call for every agency, there is a BAC po, nagde-determine po ng qualified bidders po.
Yung BAC?
Yes po.
Ano po ba ibig sabihin ng BAC, sir?
Bids and Awards Committee po.
Yun po pala yung BAC. Yung important kasi na qualification po yata doon sa mga bidders, yung kapasidad din nila kung kaya nilang magawa o masupply yung mga binibid nila ng mga kontrata. Tama po ba yun?
Yes, definitely, Mr. Chair. Of course, they have to check kung pwede nila i-deliver ang exactly the programs or projects na binibid nila, Mr. Chair.
So we could easily say that it should be a minimum requirement na kahit pinakaunang pamantayan natin, yung capacity ng isang bidder na kaya talaga niya dapat i-deliver yung binibid niya. Tama po ba yan, no?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So kung siya minimum, ang isang dapat scrutinize din natin sa mga kumpanya na nag-a-apply na mag-supply sa iba't ibang ahensya ng ating pamahalaan, yung capacity to pay, kailangan nating mas scrutinize yung capital niya. Tama po ba yon?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the capacity para ma-deliver niya is one of that qualification is to look at the capacity, yung capitalization niya. Kumbaga.
Tama kasi, am I correct in saying na ang capitalization ng isang kumpanya, hindi lamang doon kukunin yung amount ng pag-supply niya nung binid niya, kung hindi pati yung basic operations ng kumpanya, hindi po ba kasama na doon sa capitalization niya?
I think, Mr. Chair, kung pati operations dapat kasama rin po doon sa capitalization niya, pero how to operate that corporation or the bidders or contractors, Mr. Chair?
So sa pagkaintindi ko po sa ating maiksing pag-uusap, tama po ba na dapat may kapasidad sa kapital ang isang kumpanya sa pagsali sa mga bidding process sa gobyerno?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Having said that, Your Honor, there are some informations na na-receive ng inyong lingkod. I was really able to gather some information relative to the actual procurement recently entered by the DepEd. Pakisabi na lang po at pakiconfirm, should you know, if not, please verify these pieces of information na masubmit sa committee. Unang-una yung Advanced Solutions Inc. Isa po ba itong kumpanya na nag-apply ng bidding sa DepEd? Sa COA na po siguro ito?
Mr. Chair,
Before you
Sorry.
proceed, we have yet to open the motion at the motu proprio. So we have to limit our question to the office of the Vice President. But of course, later after the preliminary determination, we can proceed. But in the meantime, we have to limit the line of questioning to the office of the Vice President first.
Thank you for the enlightenment, Mr. Chair. Having heard the opinion of the chairman, I would reserve my questions for a later time. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Honorable Lara.
Yeah, a while ago po, I manifested, Mr. Chair, on the fund utilization of DepEd. I will now move, Mr. Chair, that said manifestation be put on motion that the committee take cognizance on the issues presented on the irregularity of the utilization sa paggamit ng pondo ng bayan ng naturang ahensya upang makita natin kung mayroon bang misfeasance, malfeasance o non-feasance, Mr. Chair. So I move, Mr. Chair.
So there is a motion by the Honorable Lara to take cognizance of the motu proprio upon the manifestation of Representative Jervil Luistro of the 2nd District during the budget hearing of the Department of Education. Is there any objection? Seconded by the Honorable Gutierrez. Hearing none, the motion is carried. Okay. One minute suspension is declared by the chair.
studio.